All right, so we have our screwdriver, and what we want to do is start adding some materials to it. We'll get into more details with like textures and how to customize the materials as well in this coming up video. So this is what we're going to kind of start working towards. And as we start building on to this, we'll get a little bit more in depth with all the things that you can do with textures as well. So this is kind of what we're headed towards right now. So to start us all off, we're all going to be kind of at this stage right here. Now, some people prefer your screwdriver to be still kind of hard edged like this, which is fine. You can keep it like that. Some people rather it look a little bit smoother, which is still cool. You can do that too. It's up to you. For the sake of this right here, what I'm going to do is keep it in this kind of hard edge mode and start adding on materials from this point. So to me, it's a little bit easier to make selections as well. So I'm going to continue on with it like this. So I've got my reference image still here. It's kind of restricted. My plane is down here as well. And that might get in the way at some point. We might create some different layers so that we have we're able to restrict other things here as well. Now, in order to get this look here, like with the image, what we want to do is start to select our different faces. So I'm going to go to face mode here and start with the handle. The most obvious ones are going to be these right here and the blue on the end. And so I'm going to go through and start to hold shift, and like we've done before, I'm going to go around and select these guys. Oh, kind of underneath the plane here. So what I might want to do is select this and hit Control H to hide that so I can move around my object here and get back into face mode. All of my selections are still there, and I'm going to continue with this. So I've got those selected, and I'm going to try to knock these out as well, all on the end. To get a good selection from this angle, what I want to do is do it from a side view. And so I'm going to kind of grab all of these all the way to the end over here. In order to do that, I think what might help is that make sure that your camera-based selection is set to off when you go to your modeling toolkit. You can also click on this up here. So now I'm going to drag select over these, and those are all the ones that I want to have selected. I should have held shift while doing that, so I Control Z to go back and select all of these again. I will go back to perspective mode just to double check, make sure everything is selected that I want. All the blue areas are what I want right now. Okay, so now that I've got these all selected, I'm going to hold right click and go down to assign new material. I'm going to do this. A little window pops up here, and I'm going to choose a standard surface. Okay, and once I have that selected, I can kind of scroll over here to the end, and sometimes this takes some time. Okay, this is kind of the pain with dealing with all these tabs here. Usually all your materials get stuck all the way back towards the back end. I'm going to show you a different way that we can approach this as well. So this is a new standard surface. It was already given a standard surface, but that's the default. So this is the new one. And what I want to do is call this blue handle. And I didn't even spell blue right. Let's try that again. Blue handle, hit enter, and now it's renamed that. It fixed it a little bit. I can make changes here, but what I'd like to do is show you how to get into the hypershader right here. The hypershade window is this little guy, and when I open this up, this is what pops up. And so I have my option here. It's a little slow loading up for some reason, but I have my option here for blue handle. I see it labeled right here. Now, what I can do is start to make some changes to my materials. I'm going to minimize this so I can see a couple things at the same time. Now this is a little sample shader here. So it's all sorts of weird objects. You can change the shader ball to be different things if you want to. That's more specific with what we're actually trying to do. So if you're doing plane or sphere or glass, splash, whatever it is, this is pretty good because it has all sorts of shapes and shadows. Now what I want to do is try to get the color. Now what's weird is that the color that you choose here isn't going to be the same color that appears in the rendering. So what I'm doing right now doesn't really matter a whole lot because it's most likely going to change later anyhow. And so this look right here is kind of what I'm going for. So I want to try to make that kind of match the reference image the best I can. So I'm looking, now it's not going to be great because right now this is still a solid object. So I'm in my base options right here. And so if you play around with the weight, you'll see that it either adds the color weight or it takes away. Without any weight, it's going to be black. Roughness, you can add roughness to it. Right now, it doesn't really matter, it doesn't do anything. Metalness, it will kind of give it a sheen. And so remember, this is what you're looking for, not so much this, because this is not a rendered view. And so I'm going to bring that back down because that's not quite how it should be. Specular weight. So play around with that. See how it kind of makes it dull and flat. This actually has some shine to it, right? It's plastic. And so there's something that we can do to help that out. And kind of make some adjustments as you see fit with the sliders. The color of this is fine. We're going to leave it at that base color. Roughness, you know, how rough is it? Does it have a little reflection to it? Then you decide how much reflection you want to add to it. You know, I think I can see some highlights and some reflection in there. So play around with that. The IOR is, I always forget, but if you hover over it, index of refraction, fancy. Basically, how much refracted light do you want to show on your object? This slight changes to your options. Rotation, there's no rotation on this. Transmission, this is where people get confused. Transmission is like transparency. And so again, look at this and compare it to your reference image as you play around with the weight and try to make it either more or less transparent. Now this object is slightly transparent in the blue, so I would play around with that and see that you get good transparency that kind of matches the image here. The color of that, again, either solid or not. Depth doesn't really do much. Scatter doesn't do much in this case. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of these things. Some of these options don't really have much effect on the object that we're actually creating here. Coat, you can see how shiny of a coat do you have on it. I don't think it really needs that because it's basically just colored plastic. And you can play around with the roughness, but in this case, nothing really happens much. But all of these options here are the same options that you would get in your attribute editor, except you have the added bonus of the shader ball right here to help you out. You'll also see, and I wish Maya would load this, kind of a sample of what that material looks like. So you can go back always and make the changes to this material when you need to. Now I'm going to kind of move on to another material. But what I'd like to do is actually see what does this actually look like when it's rendered out. If I go to render it now, I get a whole lot of blackness, right? The reason is because nothing's going to render without any light. So even if I show this on here, the viewport, there's no light when I turn on the lights. It says use all lights, there's no light, so it's just black. So what I'm going to do is throw in a simple light for right now. And the one I'm going to use is in the Arnold menu up on top. Go to lights, and I'm going to go to physical sky. Add this on here, and now I can kind of see what my object looks like. Move around to a better view, and it does give me like an actual physical sky. I'm going to turn my plane back on and hit H when I'm on that. That gives me something that gives me like a ground, some shadow here. And so I can see now what my object is looking like. Now, when it comes to the physical light, I'm going to click on this little box that showed up when I created that light. And basically you have color and intensity that you can play around with. And the color, make sure this is selected. I have no color on this light, but I can adjust the intensity. I've got format, I've got exposure. Exposure I'm not really going to play around with a whole lot. That basically is going to either blow out your image or make it too dark. Keep this, I would say, right about the middle. Maybe that's too much. Maybe my intensity is too much. So I'll bring that down. And so now I get an idea of what my rendered materials look like. And so I can go back to this box right here without having to reselect everything on my screwdriver, and I can adjust. And so if I need to zoom in to get a better look, I can do that. And I can adjust the colors. I can adjust what I need to try to make sure that this is going to match as accurately as possible for my actual screwdriver. So you can always go back and make changes just by selecting on the actual materials. So I would definitely make sure that you label the names of these materials as you add them to your objects. Now what I'm going to do is minimize that, minimize this. I'm going to get in here and, well, I thought I was going to do something. There we go. Come on, Maya. You can do it. I guess I shouldn't say Maya. It's really the computer that's doing it. So let's see here. Maybe instead of minimizing windows, I should close those down. All right. So I'm ready to go. I've got more objects I need to change here. I need to get back into face mode. And what I want to do is select all the things that are not blue. So I can select everything here. And then I can go back and hit Control and subtract the things. Okay, I'm going to go back actually and hide my plane again because that's being annoying. And I'm going to turn off my sky dome light for the time being, Control H on that. And I'll go back to that when I need to. Face. And I'm going through and I'm kind of deselecting. So I'm hitting Control, and instead of selecting all the things, I'm deselecting the blue areas because that's the easiest thing to do right now. Oops, I should select that. Oops. Deselect. All right. So I've got those. I'm going to get back into my side view here, and I'm going to hold Control and also deselect these guys. And so now the selections that I have are just the ones that I need for the clear parts of my screwdriver. So I'm going to hold right click and go to Assign New Material. And this little window pops up again, and just choose Standard Surface again. And I'm going to go back into my shader. And here's my new standard surface that I created. It says Standard Surface 4 in this case. And I'm going to rename that Clear Handle. Hit Enter. So now what this actually looks like is not as important. Oops. There we go. As far as the color goes, I'm just going to keep it as this normal regular color. But what I want to really pay attention to is the transmission and make it nice and clear. Again, now I'm going to go back and turn on my lights to take a better look. I'm going to hit H on that. I'm going to turn on my plane and hit H on that. And we'll look at my rendered view. My rendered view is hiding somewhere. let's see, where is, oh, it just popped up there just for a second. But it's hiding. All right. I think it might be behind my window here. There we go. All right. So I'm back to my rendered view now. And what I'm really paying attention to now is the material, and that I'm making it transparent, the bright material that I'm trying to create here. So I've got it showing transparent here, and it looks like I need to create more transparency according to the rendered view. And so even though it looks like it here, I'm going to really make sure that it's rendering correctly in the view itself. So take your time and play around with the right type of material. And so here I'm starting to customize this. And I want it to look plasticky, not like glass. And so there are presets, if you look in here, to find, here's thin plastic. It's not really thin plastic. Here's regular plastic. Maybe I can start off with that also. So some presets in here could be kind of helpful. There's other ones that we'll get into for the end of the screwdriver for something that might be metal or brushed metal in this case. That would be great for the end of the screwdriver. So let's see what plastic does. If I go to replace it with plastic, it turns it blue. I don't like that. So I'm going to change it back to that kind of gray color. And then I'm going to change the transmission to make it nice and clear. And as I'm cranking this up, you can see how it changes it here as well. Now the metalness, again, make sure that you're adding some shine to it. You want to make it look kind of true to what the actual image looks like. It's not really metal, but it does give it some shine, which is kind of nice. Also something to think about when it comes to the roughness. It's going to be less, it's not going to be very rough. It's going to be kind of slick. And as you do that, you'll see that it starts to pick up more reflections from the light that we created. So once you go through and start to kind of customize these, I'm going to go now subsurface. That doesn't have to be there. Subsurface, I'm going to keep it as that kind of light blue as well. I'm going through the different options here. Don't pay any attention to this right now. We'll get to that later. Most of the controls that you'll want to pay attention to are over here off to the side. If you wanted to, you can split your screen so you're kind of seeing both of them at the same time. Kind of have your rendered view, your hypershade settings, and and your workspace. Kind of maximize that so I can see it a little bit better. So I'm going to try to accurately get this looking the way that image does. And it's going to take playing around with these settings in here. Now, another thing I'm going to do is select this guy. Now, since this is all one thing, I'm going to go to Assign New Material. And again, choose Standard Surface. When I do that, it adds another one here. And this one I'm going to call Pointy End. I don't know why, but that's what I'm doing. And with this, I know there's a preset already for brushed metal, and I'm going to replace my default with the brushed metal. And so it gives me that, which is pretty cool because it looks black here, but if you look in the rendered view, it looks like brushed metal, like it would for the end of the screwdriver. Now this is quite a bit lighter, so I can always go and make this look lighter by adding a little bit more color to that base there. And that pretty much accurately depicts there. And it kind of carries through inside the transparent material, which is what you see inside of here as well. So play around with the materials for this. We'll get into the next video and get into materials for the bottom, and also adding some more lights as well.